The wind screamed through the tight streets of Cedar Ridge, hurling dust and icy sleet like needles against bare skin. February of 1873 showed no mercy to the frontier town, and even less to those without walls to hide behind. Vera Ashcroft pressed her back against the rough boards of Alfred Gray's general store, searching for even a scrap of shelter from the storm. Her dress, once a sturdy brown wool fit for decent travel, now clung to her thin body in rags. Mud hardened along the hem from weeks of walking, and the sleeves were torn from sleeping in brush and thorn. She had walked for 3 straight days to reach Cedar Ridge, her last coin spent on stale bread 2 towns back. "Please," she called to a woman wrapped in fur passing by. "I'm looking for work, any kind. I can clean, cook, tend animals." The woman tightened her shawl and hurried on without a glance, as if Vera were no more than drifting snow. It was the same answer she'd received again and again that morning. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but she forced herself to stand. Pride had become a luxury she could no longer afford. She staggered toward the saloon, where several men smoked beneath the wooden overhang. "Excuse me, gentlemen," she said, her voice raw from cold. "I'm looking for work. I'll sleep in the barn. Just give me a chance. I don't need much." One of the men, a heavy-set fellow with yellowed teeth, elbowed his friend. "Would you look at that? Another beggar? Town's full of 'em lately." "Probably got herself in trouble," another added, eyes flicking to Vera's bare hand. "No decent woman travels alone." "I'm a widow," Vera said quietly. It wasn't fully true. Her husband had vanished, not died. But in places like this, abandonment carried a deeper shame than death. "Sure you are," the first man laughed. "And I'm President Grant. Move along. We don't want your kind here." Heat burned her cheeks despite the freezing wind. Vera turned away, blinking hard to stop tears that would freeze if she let them fall. Across the street stood the livery stable. Maybe there she'd find mercy. Inside, the air was warmer, thick with hay and horse sweat. She spotted the owner, Harlan Voss, a weathered man shoveling manure. "Sir," she said, "I'm looking for work. I'm strong. I can clean stalls, feed horses. I'll sleep in the barn. I don't need pay, just food and shelter." Harlan barely lifted his head. "Can't help you. Got a stable boy already. And it wouldn't be proper. Woman sleeping in my barn? Folks would talk." "They already do," Vera said, desperation breaking through. "Please, I've got nowhere else." "Not my concern." He returned to his work. She stepped back into the storm. The cold gnawed deeper now, numbing her fingers, slowing her steps. She made her way to the church at the edge of town. Surely faith still meant something here. But Reverend Corbin Vale stood in the doorway, arms folded. "I'm sorry," he said. "We can't take in every stray. Church funds are for members." "I'll join," Vera said quickly. "I'll attend every service." "Without a home or family?" He shook his head. "No. Perhaps you should return to where you came from." There was nowhere to return to. Her father had made that clear the day he learned her husband had left. No daughter of mine carries that shame. She wandered back toward the center of town, her thoughts dulling as the cold sank into her bones. She'd heard freezing felt peaceful, like falling asleep. Maybe that wouldn't be so bad. A crowd had gathered near the general store. Raised voices cut through the wind, pulling her closer. "Don't care if he trades here," someone growled. "Indians got no right walking our streets like they own 'em." Through the bodies, Vera saw him. A man stood near the store entrance, unlike anyone she'd ever seen. He towered over the crowd, broad as a timber post, close to 7 feet tall. His black hair hung long in the Apache style, framing a sharp, shadowed face carved by hardship and silence. And as the wind howled around them, the town seemed to shrink beside him. He wore a blend of old ways and frontier necessity. Leather leggings worn smooth by travel, a heavy wool coat, boots scarred by long miles. Yet it was his eyes that stole Vera Ashcroft's breath. Dark as a winter sky without stars, they swept across the gathered townsfolk with a gaze that missed nothing and dismissed it all the same. When those eyes passed over her, something struck deep inside her chest, a sharp, unfamiliar pull. Recognition, perhaps, or understanding. She had no name for it. Keaton Rusk caught him staring at his daughter. A woman muttered loudly, "These savages don't know restraint." The Apache, because that was clearly what he was, did not react. He stood unmoving, solid as bedrock, like a mountain that had wandered into town and decided to stay. The hostility swirling around him seemed to mean nothing. Words slid off him like wind off stone. Vera studied him without realizing she'd stopped shivering. His clothing was clean, carefully kept. His hands, visible beneath the sleeves of his coat, were rough with calluses earned through labor, but steady, controlled, calm. This was no drifter, no troublemaker. This was a man who had come to town for supplies, no different than anyone else. "Someone ought to run him out," a voice muttered. "You want to try?" Another replied, followed by uneasy laughter. "Look at the size of him." Vera swayed. Hunger and cold finally claimed their due. She reached for a hitching post to steady herself, but her numbed fingers failed her. The world tipped. She never struck the ground. Strong arms caught her, holding her upright with startling care. She lifted her head and stared into those dark eyes. Up close, she saw they were not black at all, but a deep, earthy brown, like soil after rain. The crowd fell silent. The Apache man studied her briefly. Her torn dress, her pale skin rimed with frost, the exhaustion etched into her face. Without speaking, he shifted his hold. One arm supported her back. The other slid beneath her knees, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. "Put her down," someone shouted. "You can't just—" His gaze swept over them again. Something in his expression made the crowd retreat. Not fear, something heavier. A recognition of force that did not need to prove itself. He moved forward, carrying Vera through the parting crowd. She knew she should protest, demand to be released. But the warmth of his body was the first true heat she'd felt in days, and without meaning to, she leaned closer. "Where's he taking her?" Voices called. "Someone stop him." "You do it then." No one did. They watched, caught between horror and awe, as the giant Apache carried the ragged white woman away. Vera's last clear thought, before exhaustion pulled her under, was the scent of his coat, wood smoke and pine, clean and grounding, like memories of a life long gone. She rested her head against his shoulder and, for the first time in weeks, stopped fighting. Behind them, angry whispers erupted. But the man did not turn back. He walked on with steady purpose through the storm, carrying her as if fate itself had placed her in his arms that bitter February day. The wind howled on, but Vera no longer heard it. Sleep claimed her, deep, real sleep, born by a stranger whose kindness came without demand or judgment. Cedar Ridge would talk about this moment for years. The day the Apache carried off the beggar woman, the day their rules cracked. For Vera Ashcroft, it was simply the day her life began again. She woke to warmth and the sound of fire. For a moment, she lay still, confused. Then memory returned, falling, arms catching her, lifting her away. She opened her eyes. She was inside a cabin, solidly built, its thick log walls sealed tight against the cold. A fire burned steady in a stone hearth, shadows dancing across the room. She lay on a pallet near the flames, wrapped in blankets scented with sage and wood smoke. Across from her sat the Apache man, his hands busy with a piece of wood. In the firelight, she saw him clearly now, perhaps 35, with high cheekbones and a strong, quiet face. His hands moved with practiced skill, carving with care. She shifted, trying to sit up. He noticed at once and set the carving aside. "Water," he said. His voice was deep, even, not a question. He brought her a cup and helped her drink. The water was cool, clean, better than anything she'd tasted in weeks. She finished it and whispered, "Thank you." He nodded once and turned back toward the pot simmering over the fire. The scent rising from the pot made Vera Ashcroft's stomach twist painfully. Nokai poured the contents into a wooden bowl, stew, she realized, and carried it to her. Her hands trembled as she accepted it. The first bite stung her eyes with tears. It was simple food, venison, roots, wild herbs. But after days of hunger, it tasted richer than any meal she could remember. Nokai watched her quietly with those dark, steady eyes, then returned to his carving. As she ate, Vera studied him, trying to understand why he had helped her at all. In town, he'd been met with suspicion and hatred, yet he had shown her more mercy than any of them. "Why?" she asked softly once the bowl was empty. He glanced up. "Why what?" "Why did you help me?" He was silent for a long moment. "You needed help." That was all. No questions about who she was, what she'd done, or why she'd ended up alone and broken. She needed help, so he gave it. "They'll talk," she said quietly. "In town. They'll say ugly things about you. About me. They already do." There was no bitterness in his voice, only fact. Vera stared down at the bowl in her lap. "I have nothing," she said, her voice faltering. "No money, no family. I can't repay you. I shouldn't stay. You've done enough, but—" "Storm," he said, nodding toward the door. The wind rattled the shutters hard enough to make the walls creak. "Stay tonight. Decide tomorrow." He took the bowl from her and washed it, moving through the cabin with quiet order. Everything had its place. Tools hung neatly, supplies stacked, firewood piled close to the hearth. "What's your name?" she asked. "They call me Nokai," he said after a pause. "That's enough." "And your name?" he asked. "Vera. Vera Ashcroft." He nodded, accepting it without comment. As the evening stretched on, the tension she carried slowly eased. Nokai worked on his carving, adding wood to the fire when needed. She realized he'd given her the spot closest to the hearth while he remained on a plain stool. "I can sleep in the barn," she offered. "I don't mind." He shook his head. "No barn." He gestured around the cabin. "Here." "Then where will you sleep?" He pointed to a bedroll in the corner. "There." "I've slept in worse," he added. The wind howled louder, and Vera pulled the blankets tighter, remembering the faces in town, their whispers, their judgment. "They think you're dangerous," she said. "I am," Nokai replied calmly. "To anyone who threatens what is mine." The words escaped her before she could stop them. "Am I yours?" He looked at her then, his gaze unreadable. "You belong to no one. But under my roof, you are under my protection." Her eyes burned again. Protection. When had anyone last offered her that? "My husband left me," she said suddenly. 8 months ago. Just disappeared. Left debts. Nothing else. She swallowed. My father said I shamed the family. Said a woman who couldn't keep her husband wasn't his daughter. The words poured out of her. I tried to find work, but small towns talk. They all knew. I was the woman whose husband chose the road over her. Nokai continued carving, but she knew he was listening. I thought Cedar Ridge might be different, she said bitterly. Bigger town, more people, someone desperate enough to overlook my past. She let out a hollow laugh. It's the same everywhere. A woman alone is either pitied or suspected, never just accepted. That's white men's ways, Nokai said after a moment. Apache ways are different. A woman alone is not shameful. Sometimes necessary, he added. Sometimes strong. I don't feel strong, Vera said. I walked 3 days through a storm. No food, no shelter. She looked up at him. Just desperation. He shrugged, still standing. She considered that. What will they say? She asked quietly. A white woman staying with an Apache man. The fire cracked, the wind roared outside, and Nokai's knife continued its steady path through the wood. Let them say whatever they want, Nokai replied. Words don't change anything. They might try to cause trouble. There was a quiet certainty in the way he spoke, calm, settled, final, that made Vera Ashcroft believe him. This was a man who had faced trouble before and lived through it. A violent gust of wind slammed against the cabin walls, and she felt a surge of gratitude for the solid logs holding the storm at bay. Nokai rose and checked the door, testing the bar to be sure it was secure. Tomorrow, he said. If the storm breaks, I go to town. Trade pelts. He paused, then added, You decide then. Stay or go. And if I stay? Vera asked. He returned to his seat and picked up his carving. Then you stay. But what would I do? She pressed. I need work, real work. He glanced at her. Garden needs care, clothes need mending, game needs dressing. If you want work, yes, Vera said quickly, a sudden warmth blooming in her chest. Hope. The first she'd felt in months. Yes, I want to work. He nodded once, satisfied, and resumed carving. Silence settled between them, easy and unforced, while the storm raged beyond the walls. Warm and full for the first time in weeks, Vera felt sleep creeping in. Just before it claimed her, she heard Nokai moving about the cabin, banking the fire, settling onto his bedroll. Thank you, she whispered into the dark. He didn't answer. She closed her eyes, listening to the wind and the soft crackle of embers. Her thoughts drifted to the people in town, their sharp tongues, their harder hearts. They had warned her about the dangerous savage. Yet here she was, safer than she'd been in months, treated with more dignity than any of them had offered. Tomorrow, she would have to choose. Return to town and face their judgment, or leave again to become another nameless beggar in another cold place. Or stay here, in this modest cabin, with a man who asked no questions, passed no judgment, and offered only shelter and honest work. But tonight, she didn't need to choose. Tonight, she could rest, warm, fed, and safe, while the storm tore itself apart outside. For now, that was enough. As sleep finally pulled her under, her last thought was of Nokai's hands as he carved, steady, patient, shaping something fine from rough wood. Maybe broken things could be remade. Maybe she could too. The wind battered the cabin through the night. But inside, 2 souls found refuge. One who offered shelter without being asked, and one who had almost forgotten kindness still existed. Morning arrived in complete stillness. The storm had passed, leaving the world buried in white. Vera woke slowly, confused by warmth and comfort that felt unfamiliar. Then memory returned. The cabin, the Apache man, the quiet mercy she hadn't believed possible. She sat up and looked around. Nokai was already awake, standing near the window, studying the snow-covered land. In daylight, the cabin revealed itself more clearly, plain but spotless, everything arranged with care. Tools hung neatly from pegs. Furs and blankets were folded along the walls. A rifle rested in the corner, cleaned and ready. "Good morning," she said softly. He turned and nodded. "Morning. Coffee?" "Yes, please." He poured from a pot kept warm near the fire and handed her a tin cup. The coffee was bitter and strong, but the heat was welcome. "The storm's done," he said. "Trail to town should clear by afternoon." Her stomach tightened. The choice she'd avoided now pressed close. She sipped slowly, gathering her thoughts. She began, then stopped. How could she explain the battle inside her? Part of her knew she should leave, try again somewhere else. But a deeper part, the tired part, worn down by running and begging, wanted to stay. Nokai moved through the cabin, preparing breakfast with the same quiet purpose she'd noticed the night before. He set a plate before her, fried bread and dried meat. Simple, but her mouth watered. "Thank you," she said, meaning far more than the meal. They ate in silence. Vera studied the cabin, trying to imagine herself here. It was nothing like the life she'd lost. There was no fine furniture, no decoration beyond a few ceremonial items hanging on one wall. But it was warm. It was safe, and here she was treated with respect. "If I stay," she said suddenly, "what will people in town say? What will they do?" Nokai considered this. "They'll talk, they always do. Maybe threaten." He met her gaze. "But this is my land, my business." After a pause, he added, "Still, they might try to trouble you." The fire cracked softly as the weight of that truth settled between them. "My trading?" Nokai said evenly. "I've traded with them 10 years. They need my furs. They need my meat. Business stays business." Vera Ashcroft thought about that. It was true. Even the day before, for all their hatred, no one had stopped him from selling his goods. They depended on what he brought, even while despising the man who brought it. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," she admitted quietly, "to face their judgment every day." "I'm not asking you to face them," Nokai said. "I'm asking if you want work, a roof, food." He gestured around the cabin. This is not town, she understood then. He wasn't offering her a daily battle with whispers and stares. The cabin stood far from Cedar Ridge, miles removed from its cruelty. Here, she could have shelter, honest labor, and dignity, without bowing her head to anyone. "Yes," she said, surprised by the firmness of her own voice. "I want to stay." Nokai nodded as if he had expected nothing else. "Good. There's plenty of work," he added. He showed her the cabin and its rhythms. Water came from a spring behind the house, protected by a small shelter he'd built himself. Firewood was stacked beneath a lean-to. A root cellar stored vegetables and cured meat. A shed nearby held tools and supplies. "The garden's there," he said, pointing to a patch now buried under snow. "When spring comes, it needs planting. You know garden work?" "Yes," Vera replied. "I had a kitchen garden once." She hesitated, the past tightening in her chest. "Yes," I know gardening. Good, he said. Trap lines need checking too. I can teach you how to skin and prepare pelts. She nodded, swallowing her unease at the thought. She had asked for work. She would not turn away now. The day passed faster than she expected. Nokai showed her where everything belonged, explaining his systems. Nothing was random. Everything had order, purpose. This was no rough shack. It was a home, carefully kept. As afternoon neared, Nokai pulled on his heavy coat. I need supplies, he said. I'll be back before dark. Is there anything I should do while you're gone? She asked. Rest, he replied. You're still weak. Work can wait until tomorrow. He paused at the door and looked back at her. Bar the door after me. Don't open it for anyone. A chill ran through her. Are you expecting trouble? No, he said, but caution keeps people alive. After he left, Vera slid the heavy bar into place. The cabin felt different without him. Smaller somehow, yet strangely larger in its quiet. She moved slowly, learning the space that might become hers. Home. The word felt unfamiliar. She found one of Nokai's carvings on a shelf, a bird with wings spread mid-flight. The detail stole her breath. Every feather had been shaped with care. She traced it with her fingers, awed by the patience it must have taken. Time stretched. She tended the fire, then fetched water and washed properly for the first time in weeks. In a small mirror, she barely recognized herself. Hollow cheeks, tangled hair, a woman worn thin by survival. She had just begun working a comb through her hair when the sound of hooves reached her ears. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She moved to the window and looked out. 3 riders stood in the yard. She recognized one immediately. Rhett Malvern, the deputy from town. The other 2 were strangers, but their intent was written in the way they surveyed the cabin. Hello, the house, Malvern called. We know you're in there, woman. Vera stayed silent, Nokai's warning echoing in her mind. We saw the Apache head into town. Malvern continued. Come on out. We're here to help you. Take you back to civilization, where you belong. Her hands trembled, but she did not move. Don't be foolish, he pressed. You really think that savage means you any good? You're nothing but a toy to him, another voice added. Come out now, while you still can. Go away, Vera called, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. The words hung in the cold air as the men shifted in their saddles. I'm fine where I am. You don't know what you're saying? One of the other men called. They've got ways of twisting a woman's mind. I'm thinking clearly. Vera Ashcroft answered, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. Now leave. This is private property. Rhett Malvern let out a harsh laugh. Property? You really think the law recognizes an Indian's claim to land? Open that door or we'll break it down. Vera's thoughts raced. The door was thick and barred, but 3 determined men could force it given time. She moved toward where Nokai kept his rifle, then stopped. She didn't know how to use it, and even if she did, could she pull the trigger? Last chance, Malvern called. Come out peaceful, or... A rifle cracked through the air. Not from inside the cabin. The horses reared and stamped, nerves flaring. That's far enough, gentlemen. Vera knew that voice instantly. Nokai's, calm but edged with steel. Now hold on, Malvern began. We're just trying to help the lady. She's clearly not thinking straight, staying out here with... She has made her choice. Nokai cut in. You will respect it. And if we don't? Malvern sneered. You'll shoot a deputy? That's a hanging offense, boy. Self-defense is no crime, Nokai replied evenly. You are on my land, threatening my guest. Leave, Now. Vera peered through the window. Nokai stood at the edge of the clearing, rifle steady in his hands. Even from a distance, she could see the calm control in his stance. This was not a man bluffing. "This isn't over," Malvern spat. "There are laws about white women and Indians." "Moral laws," Nokai said, "not legal ones." "You're corrupting her," Malvern went on, "and the good people of Cedar Ridge won't stand for it." "The good people of Cedar Ridge let her starve in their streets," Nokai replied. "Their morality means nothing here." The truth of it landed hard. Malvern's face flushed with anger, but at last he turned his horse. "You'll regret this," he shouted back. "Both of you." They rode away. Vera sagged against the wall, her legs trembling as the tension drained from her body. Moments later, she heard Nokai's footsteps. She rushed to unbar the door. He stepped inside, set his rifle back in its place, and studied her with those dark, steady eyes. "You stayed," he said. "You told me to bar the door," she replied, "and not open it for anyone." A faint smile touched his mouth. "Good." He placed a pack on the table. Supplies. Then he drew out a folded bundle of fabric. "And this. For you. Your dress needs mending. This one's warmer." Vera unfolded it. A simple wool dress, plain but well made. Tears blurred her vision. "I can't pay for this." "I already said," Nokai replied. "I'm not asking for payment. You need winter clothes. This is practical." She pressed the dress to her chest, overwhelmed. After months of cruelty and indifference, even this quiet kindness felt almost unbearable. "They'll come back," she said. "Maybe," he answered. "Probably." He continued unpacking. Flour, salt, coffee, ammunition. Change takes time. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. "Truly?" He paused, his hand still. "Long ago, my mother was cast out. She married a white trapper, against tribal law. When he died, she had nowhere to go. No one helped her," he continued. "Not Apache, not white. She starved to death when I was 12 winters." Vera's chest tightened. "I'm so sorry." "It wasn't your doing," Nokai said, "but I remember how they looked at her, like she was nothing. I remember begging for help, from anyone." He resumed unpacking. "You needed help, I could give it." Simple words, but nothing about it was simple. Yet sitting there, in a warm cabin, with a quiet man who asked nothing of her but honest work, Vera felt more peace than she had in years. "Thank you," she said again, knowing it wasn't enough. Nokai nodded, understanding all the same. Tomorrow, work begins. Tonight, rest, real rest. As evening settled and they shared another modest meal, Vera thought of the men who had come, their threats, their accusations. She thought of Cedar Ridge, where she had been nothing but a problem to be dismissed. And for the first time, she knew she would never go back. Here, she was a guest. Tomorrow, she would be a worker. And perhaps someday, she might become something more. For now, this was enough. The cabin. The quiet. This unexpected refuge shared with a man who understood what it meant to live on the outside, looking in. 2 weeks passed in uneasy peace. Vera Ashcroft fell into the rhythm of life at the cabin, guided by the routines Nokai had long kept. She patched clothing, cooked meals, and learned to check the nearest trap lines. Her hands, once soft from an easier life, grew rough and capable. The whispers reached them on Nokai's next trip into town. He returned later than usual that evening, his face darker than she'd ever seen it. He set his pack down with more force than necessary. What happened? Vera asked, pausing in her work over a rabbit pelt she was learning to scrape. Nothing that matters, he replied. But his clenched jaw told another story. She didn't push. She had learned Nokai spoke only when ready. That night, as they ate, he finally said, "They're using your name in town, ugly ways." Her hand froze around her cup. What kind of names? It doesn't matter, he said. Small words from frightened people. Then he met her eyes. They call you a barn rat. Say you'd sleep anywhere for food, like an animal. She felt heat rise in her face. Not anger, but shame. Other things too, he added quietly. Worse things. She lowered her gaze. They're not wrong, she said. I begged to sleep in barns. My husband left me. My family cast me out. She swallowed. By their rules, I'm ruined. I begged in their streets. And now I live with a man who isn't my husband. Nokai's eyes hardened. Their rules mean nothing. You work. You harm no one. That is not ruin. But something fragile inside her cracked all the same. She began thinking about Cedar Ridge more than she wanted to, imagining the whispers, the knowing looks. When she caught her reflection, she saw what they must see. A fallen woman, someone without worth. The next day proved her fears justified. Vera was hanging laundry when she heard horses. Her stomach tightened as she recognized several women from town. Among them was Dorothy Gray, the general store owner's wife. They stopped at the edge of the clearing, remaining mounted. Vera Ashcroft, Dorothy called, her voice heavy with judgment. We've come to appeal to whatever decency you have left. Vera forced herself to step closer, though every instinct urged her to flee. You're living in sin, another woman said flatly. Openly. With a heathen savage, have you no concern for your soul? I'm working, Vera replied, steady despite herself. Honestly, there's no sin in honest work. Dorothy laughed, a sharp, cutting sound. Work? Is that what you call it? We know what kind of work a woman does for a man she isn't married to. It's not like that, Vera said. Then marry him, a younger woman challenged. If it's innocent, make it right before God and man. Marry an Indian. Dorothy recoiled. That would be worse. At least now she can repent. Leave. Salvage what little reputation remains. There's nothing left to salvage, Vera said, bitterness surprising even her. You made that clear when you let me starve in your streets. You're a woman who couldn't keep her husband, Dorothy snapped. That should have driven you to examine your failings, not pile sin upon sin. At that moment, Nokai stepped out of the cabin. The women's horses shifted nervously. Ladies, he said, his voice calm and cold, you are not welcome here. We're trying to save her soul, Dorothy insisted, though she eased her horse back. Her soul is her concern, Nokai replied. Leave, now. And what if we don't? One woman sneered. You'll scalp us? Nokai met her gaze without blinking. The woman went pale. This isn't finished, Dorothy said. The decent people of Cedar Ridge won't stand by while white women are corrupted. She turned her horse. We'll pray for you, Vera. The riders withdrew, their judgment lingering like smoke. Vera stood in the clearing, the wind tugging at her skirts, knowing something had shifted. Cedar Ridge had drawn its line, and she had already crossed it. Pray you come to your senses before it's too late. The women rode away in a cloud of righteous fury, leaving Vera Ashcroft standing in the cold, shaking. Don't listen to them, Nokai said quietly, but how could she not? Their words worked their way beneath her skin like splinters, festering long after they were gone. That night, she barely touched her supper. The harassment only grew worse. Each time Nokai went into town, he returned with new stories, rumors spreading like rot, each more vicious than the last. They said Vera had bewitched him, that she carried his half-breed child, that she sold herself for food and shelter. Then came the nights. The first time, it was only voices in the dark, shouting filth from the tree line. Nokai grabbed his rifle, but by the time he stepped outside, the riders were already gone. The second time, a week later, they hurled stones at the cabin, laughing and howling like demons. One rock shattered the small window, glass spraying across the floor. "Cowards," Nokai said as he boarded it up. "Only brave in the dark, only brave together." But Vera couldn't ignore it. Each incident tightened her nerves, made her flinch at every sound. She found herself staring toward the trees, waiting. Then came the night that changed everything. Vera woke to violent pounding on the door, so hard it rattled the entire cabin. "Open up," came Rhett Malvern's voice. "Got a warrant for the woman. Suspicion of theft and prostitution." Nokai was already on his feet, rifle in hand. "No theft here, no prostitution. Leave." "Can't do that," Malvern replied. "We got papers. She comes with us, or we come in and get her." "Show the papers through the window," Nokai demanded. "Don't need to show an Indian anything," Malvern snapped. "Open the door, or we break it down." Vera clutched her shawl, terror hammering her chest. "Maybe I should go," she whispered. "No papers," Nokai said firmly. "They're lying. No judge would sign such a thing without cause." The pounding grew louder. She could hear several voices now, 4, maybe 5 men. "Last chance," Malvern called. "Send her out and we leave peaceful. Keep her and it gets ugly." Nokai peered through the window. His face hardened. "They brought rope," he said quietly. The word struck her like a blow. Rope. She knew what that meant. "Back room," Nokai said. "Bar the door. No matter what you hear," he added, meeting her eyes. "Don't come out." She saw fear there. Not for himself, but for her. Vera ran to the small back room, barely more than storage, and dropped the bar just as the front door splintered. What followed would haunt her for years. Wood cracking, curses, the sickening thud of fists meeting flesh. Nokai's rifle fired once, then clattered uselessly to the floor. Furniture shattered. Then, suddenly, silence. "Where is she?" Malvern's voice came, breathless and furious. No answer. "Hit him again. Make him talk." A dull blow sounded. Still, Nokai said nothing. Vera pressed her hands over her mouth to stifle a sob. Every instinct screamed at her to run to him, but his words echoed in her mind. "No matter what happens, don't come out." "Check the back room," someone said. Footsteps approached. The handle rattled. "Barred from inside?" a voice muttered. "She's in there." "Vera Ashcroft," Malvern called. "Come out now and we'll go easy on you. Make us break this door, and I can't promise what happens next." She stayed silent, barely breathing. "Your Indian can't protect you anymore," Malvern went on. "We got him tied up. He's still breathing for now. You come out, he stays that way." The threat hung heavy in the air. Vera closed her eyes. She couldn't let them kill Nokai because of her. Her hand moved toward the bar. Then a new voice cut through the chaos, sharp, commanding. "What in the name of Almighty God is going on here?" Malvern's tone shifted instantly, Judge Sylvan Gray, sir. We were just— From what I see, Gray interrupted, this is breaking and entering. Assault. Did you say you had a warrant? Well, not exactly a warrant, but— Then you are unlawfully attacking a man in his own home. Gray snapped. Cut him loose, immediately. But the woman— What woman? Gray said coldly. I see a property owner defending himself against criminals. Unless you have legal papers, you are the ones breaking the law. There was scrambling, muttered curses. This isn't over, Malvern spat. Vera heard boots retreating into the night. The cabin fell into a terrible, fragile quiet. Yes, Judge Sylvan Gray said coldly. It is. Any man I find out here again without lawful cause will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Now leave, before I have you all arrested. Only after the sound of horses faded did Vera Ashcroft step out from the back room. Nokai sat slumped on the floor, blood running from a cut above his eye, his wrists raw and marked with rope burns. Judge Gray stood in the doorway, an older man with hard lines and eyes that missed nothing. Are you all right, miss? He asked. Vera nodded, unable to speak, and dropped to her knees beside Nokai. I'll be going now, the judge said. Then he paused. Nokai, you may want to consider making certain legal arrangements. It would solve many problems. He tipped his hat and left. Vera cleaned Nokai's wounds with trembling hands. I'm sorry, she whispered. This is my fault. I'll leave tomorrow. His hand closed around hers, firm, steady. You stay. But they'll come back, she said through tears. They won't stop. Then we face them, he replied. Together. She looked at him, vision blurred. This man owed her nothing, yet he had stood between her and violence, taken blows meant for her, refused to surrender her. Why? She asked again. This time, his answer was different. Because you are not nothing, Nokai said quietly. Not a barn rat, not ruined. You are Vera. You work hard. You don't complain. You make good coffee. A faint smile crossed his bruised face. Worth fighting for? She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his shoulder, and cried for the first time since arriving at the cabin. Not from despair, but from relief, from gratitude, from the fragile beginning of hope. Outside, dawn crept across the land. They had survived the night. Whatever came next, they would face it, as he had said, together. The days after the attack were quiet, but it was the tense quiet of held breath, like storm clouds waiting to break. Vera threw herself into work, determined not to dwell on that night. She found comfort in routine, cooking, mending, learning the skills Nokai patiently taught her. He began showing her how to work pelts, how to scrape and stretch them properly. Her first attempts were awkward, but he never criticized, only demonstrated again, hands steady and sure. It was during one of those evenings that she noticed his carving had changed. After supper, he would sit by the fire, knife moving with new intensity, shaping forms she couldn't quite make out in the flickering light. What are you making? She finally asked. He looked up, then held out the piece. It was a bird, a small sparrow, wings folded tight, head tucked against an imagined wind. It's beautiful, she said, tracing the delicate feathers. But why a sparrow? Small bird, he said. Common. People think nothing of it. He studied the carving. But it survives winter when larger birds flee, stronger than it looks. She understood then. He was carving her, or at least how he saw her. The realization tightened her throat. As the weeks passed, more carvings appeared. A rabbit, alert and ready to bolt. A deer, graceful despite exhaustion. A wolf, alone but unbowed. He never said they were for her. Yet she found them placed carefully near her workspace, beside the wash basin, near her bedding. "You could sell these," she said one day, admiring an intricate eagle. "In town, to traders." "Maybe," Okai said. "Not why I make them." "Then why?" He was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "My grandfather taught me," he said at last. "Wood holds spirits, waiting. Carver's job is to find them, set them free." He met her gaze. Sometimes a person needs to see their spirit outside themselves, to remember what they are. That night, Vera studied the carvings by firelight. Each was different, yet all carried the same quiet strength, endurance. Was this how Nokai saw her? Not as the broken woman Cedar Ridge had named her, but as something worth patience and care. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Vera was working in the small garden plot Nokai had helped clear of snow when she heard a horse approaching. Her body tensed, ready to flee, but it was only one rider. A woman. She recognized her at once. Lydia Rowe, the schoolteacher. She was younger than most of the town matrons, perhaps 30, with a plain face softened by kindness. "Miss Ashcroft," Lydia Rowe called, remaining mounted. "May I speak with you?" Vera Ashcroft approached carefully. "If you're here to save my soul or persuade me to leave." "I'm here to apologize," Lydia cut in, her voice low. "And to warn you." The words caught Vera off guard. She searched the other woman's face for deceit, but found only sincerity and fear. "Warn me about what?" Lydia glanced around uneasily. "May we speak inside? I shouldn't be seen here long." After a moment's hesitation, Vera nodded. Inside the cabin, Vera poured coffee for them both. Lydia did not waste time. "I was there," she said. "The day you came to town. I saw you asking for work. I saw how they treated you. I said nothing, did nothing. I've regretted it every day since." "Why didn't you help me then?" Vera asked quietly. Lydia twisted her hands together. "Because I'm a coward. Because I need my position. A school teacher who shows poor judgment, who associates with the wrong people, gets dismissed without a second thought. And then I'd be where you were." Anger flared in Vera's chest, but she forced it down. She understood too well the terror of slipping from barely acceptable to untouchable. "You said you came to warn me," Vera said. "Yes." Lydia leaned forward. "There's talk in town. Dangerous talk. Some of the men, led by Rhett Malvern, are claiming Nokai has you under some kind of spell, that you're not acting of your own will. They're petitioning the territorial judge to have you removed for your own protection." Judge Sylvan Gray already put a stop to that. "He's only here twice a month," Lydia replied. "The rest of the time, Malvern and his friends do as they please. And they're gaining support. Even people who didn't care before are listening. They're calling it the protection of white womanhood. Christian values." The warmth of the coffee did nothing to chase the chill creeping through Vera. "What should I do?" "I don't know," Lydia admitted. Then she hesitated, reached into her bag, and pulled out a small cloth bundle. "But I wanted you to have this." Inside were needles, strong thread, a small pair of scissors, and several yards of decent fabric. "I can't accept it. Please." Lydia stood abruptly. "It doesn't make up for my silence, but maybe it helps." She moved toward the door. "I should leave before someone notices my horse." She paused at the threshold. "He's a good man. You're Nokai. I've watched him trade for years. He never cheats, never causes trouble no matter how they treat him. You could do far worse than a man who sees your worth when the world refuses to. After Lydia left, Vera sat staring at the sewing supplies. Such a small kindness. But it reminded her that Cedar Ridge wasn't entirely without conscience. It also gave her an idea. When Nokai returned from checking the trap lines, she showed him the fabric. "I want to make something," she said. "Something to sell. If I earn real money, maybe they'll stop seeing me as what they think I am." Nokai studied her closely. "You want their approval?" "I want them to leave us alone," she corrected. "And money speaks louder than gossip." He nodded slowly. "What would you make?" "Shirts, proper ones. The men in town, most of their wives don't sew well. I noticed when I was there. Crooked seams, poor repairs. I can do better." It was true. Her mother had insisted she learn fine needlework back when there were hopes of a respectable marriage. The skill had once felt useless. Now it might save her. Nokai helped her arrange a workspace near the window where the light was strongest. As she worked on the first shirt, he sat nearby, carving. This time, she could clearly see what he was shaping. A woman bent over her sewing, captured in deep concentration. "That's me," Vera said softly. "Yes. I don't look afraid." "Because you aren't," Nokai replied. "Not when you work. When you work, you remember who you are." She thought about that as her needle moved steadily through the cloth. He was right. When she worked, she wasn't the abandoned wife, the beggar, the fallen woman. She was simply Vera, making something useful with her own hands. By evening, the first shirt was finished. Straight seams, even stitches, well fitted. Nokai examined it with the same care he gave his carvings. "Good," he said. But she saw the approval in his eyes. That night, as they shared supper, Vera found herself thinking again about Judge Gray's words. Legal arrangements. She understood what he was suggesting. Marriage would give her legal standing, make it harder for Rhett Malvern and his allies to interfere. Months ago, the idea of marrying an Apache man would have filled her with horror. Now she watched Nokai as he tended the fire, his movements careful and deliberate. She remembered his body braced against the door, the way he refused to hand her over, even as fists and boots came down on him. "Nokai," she said quietly. "What did Sylvan Gray mean? About legal arrangements?" He stilled, then turned to face her. "You already know." "Yes. But is it even lawful? For us to—" "Lawful, yes," he answered. "Accepted, no." He sat across from her. "It could end the trouble. Or make it worse. Hard to say." "What do you think?" she asked. For a long moment he said nothing, the carving knife resting idle in his hand. "I think you deserve a man who offers marriage because he wants you, not because the law says it is useful." Heat crept into her cheeks. "And you don't want—" "I didn't say that." His dark eyes held hers. "I said you deserve more than a marriage meant only as armor." The air between them tightened. She realized how sharply aware she had become of him. His rare smiles, the gentleness of his hands despite their strength. "What if it wasn't only for protection?" she asked softly. He set the carving aside and gave her his full attention. "Then it would be a different question." Before she could answer, hoofbeats thundered toward the cabin, many horses, moving fast. Nokai was on his feet, reaching for his rifle. "Stay inside." But she already recognized the voice shouting outside. "Both of you come out now." Rhett Malvern called. Do it quiet and nobody gets hurt. They don't learn, Nokai muttered. Wait, Vera said suddenly, an idea forming. Let me try. Before he could stop her, she grabbed the finished shirt and stepped onto the porch. I'm coming out, she called. Don't shoot. I want to talk. Torchlight revealed at least 8 men. Malvern, several merchants, familiar faces from town. Gentlemen, Vera said, surprised by the steadiness of her voice. I have a business proposal. Confusion flickered across Malvern's face. Business? The only business here is removing you from this den of sin. Look at this shirt, she said, ignoring him. She stepped forward so the light caught the stitching. Look at the seams, the cut, the quality. Despite themselves, several men leaned closer. She spotted Bennett Crow and Thorne Kessler among them. So you can sew? Malvern scoffed. And? How many of you pay high prices to order shirts from Denver? Vera pressed. I can make better ones, faster, cheaper. We don't need anything from you, someone shouted. But Bennett Crow examined the shirt with a merchant's eye. That is fine work, he admitted reluctantly. I'm offering honest trade, Vera said. You need clothing, I need wages, nothing more. She's stalling, Malvern snapped. Trying to distract us. Distract you from what? Nokai's voice came from the doorway. He stood behind her, rifle held loose but ready. You have legal papers this time? Malvern scowled. I don't need papers to protect a white woman from corruption. I am not corrupted, Vera said firmly. I work for my keep. I offer labor for pay. Since when is honest work a crime? You're living in sin with a heathen, someone yelled. Something in her finally broke free. Weeks of shame burned away. You want to know what sin is? She said, her voice rising. Letting a woman starve because her husband abandoned her. Turning away someone begging to work because she lacks a man's name to make her respectable. That's the corruption, she continued. You'd rather see me dead than helped by someone you look down on. Watch your tongue, Malvern warned. Vera did not look away. Or what? Vera shot back. You'll drag me off and beat me like you beat Nokai? Let the whole territory see what kind of good Christian men you are. She let out a bitter laugh. You call him a savage. Yet he showed me more humanity in a single day than your town managed in a week. Vera, Nokai said quietly, a warning in his tone. She felt it. She was pushing hard, close to violence. But Thorne Kessler swung down from his horse and stepped forward, hands open. Let me look at that shirt again. Vera passed it to him, watching as he turned it beneath the torchlight. Kessler had a reputation for practicality. Quality mattered more to him than gossip. This is better than what my wife makes, he said at last, and better than what the traveling merchants bring through. How much? He asked. Marcus, you can't be serious, Rhett Malvern snapped. I need shirts, Kessler replied flatly. Good ones. For church and for business. $2 for a dress shirt, Vera said, forcing her voice steady. $1 for work shirts. Denver prices, someone protested. Denver quality, Vera answered, and faster. A murmur rippled through the group. These were merchants. Profit spoke louder than sermons. This is madness, Malvern growled. You're all being fooled. She's a loose woman. A woman who delivers good work and keeps her word, Kessler cut in, which is more than can be said for some men in this town. The tension shifted. Vera saw it clearly now, the line between prejudice and pragmatism. I'll take 2, Kessler declared. One black for church, one gray for business. Marcus, Malvern said, stunned. It's business, Kessler replied. Nothing else? He turned to Vera. When? 2 weeks, she said, hardly believing it herself. I might be interested too, Bennett Crow added slowly, studying the seams. If the quality holds. This is a mistake, Malvern said coldly. You're normalizing sin. What next? Letting Indians marry our daughters. No one's talking about marriage, Kessler snapped. We're talking about shirts. Malvern wheeled his horse to face Vera. This changes nothing. You're still living in sin, still a stain on Cedar Ridge. One way or another, you'll be gone. That's enough. A new voice cut through the night. Sylvan Gray stepped into the torchlight, and Vera wondered how long he had been listening from the dark. The Deputy Malvern, the judge said calmly. Are you threatening these people? We're concerned citizens, Malvern answered stiffly. Citizens who seem to forget that harassment is illegal, Gray replied, steel in his voice. Mr. Kessler is commissioning shirts. Mr. Crow is considering the same. That is commerce, not corruption. He looked at Vera. And as far as I can see, Ms. Ashcroft is employed as a housekeeper and seamstress. Unless you have evidence of a crime, I suggest you leave them to their business. Malvern's face twisted with rage, but he could not challenge the judge outright. This isn't over. No, Gray said pleasantly. It isn't. Because if I hear of another midnight raid on this property, charges will follow. Are we clear? The group began to break apart. Kessler promised to return by daylight with measurements. Crow nodded, already calculating costs. Gray lingered as the torches retreated. Cleverly handled, Ms. Ashcroft, he said. But Malvern is right about one thing. He'll find other ways. Then what should we do? Vera asked. The judge glanced between her and Nokai. What I suggested before still stands. Legal protection has its uses. He tipped his hat. Good evening. When he was gone, Vera and Nokai stood in the doorway, watching the last lights vanish into the dark. You took a great risk, Nokai said at last. I'm tired of being afraid, Vera replied. Tired of letting them shame me for surviving. He studied her, then nodded once. You spoke like a warrior. I didn't feel like a warrior, Vera Ashcroft admitted. I was terrified. The best warriors are, Nokai replied. Fear makes you careful. Careful keeps you alive. They went back inside. The cabin felt steadier now, as if her defiance had thickened the walls and driven the night a little farther away. Vera picked up the fabric Lydia Rowe had brought, already measuring it in her mind. Will they really let me work? She asked. Or will Rhett Malvern find a way to stop it? Some will trade, Nokai said. Men like Thorne Kessler care about quality and profit. Others. He shrugged. Malvern feeds on hate. He won't stop easily. Vera ran her fingers over the cloth, thinking. Nokai. About what Sylvan Gray said. About legal protection. He watched her steadily. You want protection? I want. She searched for the right words. When I stood up to them tonight, you were behind me. Not speaking for me. Not shielding me like I was weak. Just there. Solid. She met his eyes. I've never had that before. Someone who believes I can fight, but stands ready if I need them. You are strong enough, Nokai said simply. I knew it when I saw you in town. Beaten down, but not broken. Like a bird with a wounded wing. Needs time. Then it flies again. Is that why you helped me? She asked softly. Because you saw something worth saving? No. He stepped closer, his gaze intent. I helped because it was right. I stayed because... He hesitated. Because you don't look at me and see a savage. You see me. And you don't look at me and see a ruined woman? Vera asked. You see me? Not ruined, he said firmly. Never ruined. Hurt, yes. Lost for a time. But gold does not ruin when fire tests it. It comes out pure. Tears pricked her eyes. I'm not gold, Nokai. I'm just me. Yes, he said. Just Vera. That is enough. More than enough. The air between them felt charged, alive with possibility. Vera thought again of the judge's words, but now they meant more than protection. They meant partnership, not just shelter, but a home. If we, she began, then stopped. If we married, it wouldn't be just for safety. Not for me. Nokai went very still. What would it be for? For mornings working side by side, she said. For evenings by the fire. For someone who sees me and doesn't turn away. She drew a breath. For love. I hardly dare use the word yet. Love grows, Nokai said quietly. Like a garden. Needs tending, patience, time. The roots are already there, waiting for spring. It wasn't a fiery declaration, but it was better. A promise of something that could last. Is that a yes? Vera asked, a smile tugging at her mouth. Is that a proper proposal? Nokai countered, and she laughed to see a rare smile touch his face. I suppose not, she admitted. How did the Apache propose? Different ways. Always with a gift, something made, hunted or grown. Shows the ability to provide. Vera looked around. The pelts from his hunts, the vegetables from his garden, the carvings by the fire. Then she looked down at the shirt in her hands. Then I'll make you something, she decided. The finest shirt in the territory. When it's finished, I'll ask properly. Nokai nodded. And I will answer properly. They stood there, two people who had met at the edges of the world, and discovered that the margins could be a place of freedom, not exile. Outside, the night still carried threats and judgment. Inside, there was warmth, work, and the quiet certainty that broken things could be mended and made stronger at the seams. Vera picked up her needle and began to plan. She would make shirts for Kessler and Bennett Crow, prove her worth as a tradeswoman. But first, she would make Nokai's shirt. Every stitch a promise, every seam a declaration that she was done running, done hiding, done being ashamed. She was exactly where she belonged. The November wind howled like a living thing, rattling the windows Nokai had reinforced with extra boards. For 3 days the storm raged, turning the world beyond the cabin into a white void. Vera worked by lamplight, her hands steady on the fine linen she had bought with her first earnings. Nokai's shirt was nearly finished. She had labored over every seam, making each stitch exact. It was the finest work she had ever done. Practical, elegant, touched with care. The storm's getting worse, Nokai said, feeding the fire. Ice crystals clung to his hair from checking the animals outside. Vera looked up from her work. They had enough supplies. Nokai had planned for storms like this. He sat across from Vera Ashcroft, lifting the piece of antler he had been carving with steady hands. Early storm, he said, but not unexpected. Silence settled between them, not the uneasy quiet of fear, but something warm and shared, wrapping around them like another blanket. Vera stitched by lamplight, yet found herself glancing up more often than she meant to, watching the firelight shape Nokai's face, watching the certainty in his hands. What are you making? She asked. He held it up. A hair comb, Wedding gift. Vera's needle paused mid-stitch. Whose wedding? His eyes met hers, dark and unflinching. Ours, when you ask properly. Heat rushed to her cheeks, but she smiled. That's rather presumptuous. Practical, he corrected. Storm gives time to prepare. They worked on in companionable silence, while the wind screamed outside. At last, Vera finished the final buttonhole and lifted the shirt to inspect it. The fabric caught the lamplight, seam straight and sure. It's finished, she said softly. Nukai set aside his carving and stepped closer. His fingers traced the collar, the cuffs, examining it with the same care he gave everything that mattered. Very fine. Not too fine, Vera said, holding it against his chest. Just right. For the man who gave me shelter when the world turned its back. Who taught me I wasn't ruined, only tested. Who sees me as Vera, not what others call me. A sudden gust rattled the cabin, something striking the wall outside. Nukai turned toward the door. We should... He stopped. Voices cut through the storm, faint but unmistakable. Nukai reached for his rifle, then paused. That voice. It's Lydia Rowe. He opened the door carefully. Lydia stumbled inside, half frozen, supporting another woman Vera didn't recognize at first. Young, heavily pregnant, barely conscious. Please. Lydia gasped. She needs help. The baby, it's coming. They moved instantly. Nukai carried the woman to Vera's pallet by the fire. Vera helped Lydia out of her frozen cloak. Who is she? Vera asked, already pulling blankets closer. Maria Vale, Lydia said, shivering. Reverend Corbin Vale's daughter. Her husband died last month in a mining accident. When her father learned she was with child, he said she must have sinned before marriage. He cast her out. Cold anger settled in Vera's chest. The same Reverend who had turned her away. I've been hiding her, Lydia continued. But she went into labor tonight. I couldn't do this alone. No one in town would help. They said she made her choices. You were right to come, Vera said firmly. Nukai, hot water, clean cloths. As Nukai moved, Mireya stirred, her eyes fluttering open. No, she whispered. Scandal. I'll ruin you too. Hush, Vera said gently, gripping her hand. You're safe. We're going to help you and your baby. The hours that followed were relentless. Vera had helped with births before, in another life, but never with a storm howling like this beyond the walls. Inside, another storm broke as Mireya labored. Lydia surprised them all with her steadiness, following every instruction. Nukai kept the fire strong, the water hot, his calm presence anchoring the room. I'm scared, Mireya whispered between contractions. We're here, Vera said. You're not alone. They say I'm cursed, Mireya sobbed, that my baby will be marked by sin. The only mark your child will have, Vera said fiercely, is that he was born loved. Anyone who says otherwise is a fool. Near dawn, as the storm finally loosened its grip, Mireya's son entered the world, healthy, perfect, and loud. He's beautiful, Lydia breathed. Mireya wept as Vera placed the child in her arms, the fire crackling softly, the night's cruelty finally held at bay. I have nothing, Mireya Vale whispered. No home, no family, no way to care for him. Vera Ashcroft looked at Nukai. A silent exchange passed between them. He gave a small nod. You have shelter here as long as you need, Vera said. The barn is warm and dry. We can make it proper. You're a widow, not a sinner, she added gently. Your boy deserves a chance. But people will talk, Mireya said, fear creeping back into her voice. They'll say terrible things about you for helping me. They already say terrible things, Vera replied. It hasn't killed us yet. Lydia Rowe watched them with quiet wonder. You'd do that? She asked. Take in a stranger and her baby? Someone took me in when I was a stranger, Vera said, glancing at Nokai. Feels right to pass it on. They spent the day making arrangements. Nokai and Lydia worked together to set up the barn, solid, sheltered, and warmer than it looked. Vera stayed with Mireya and the baby, making sure both were resting and strong. As evening fell, Lydia pulled on her coat. I have to get back before they notice I'm gone, she said. But I'll come when I can. I'll bring supplies. Be careful, Vera warned. If they learn I helped, Lydia said, lifting her chin, then I'll face it. I'm tired of being a coward. Watching you stand up to them, build a life anyway. It's changed me. After Lydia left, Vera found Nokai outside, surveying the storm's damage. Big decision, he said quietly, taking them in. I should have asked you first, Vera said. Are you angry? Not angry, he replied, turning to her. Proud. We'll have a full household, Vera said with a wry smile. A cast-out widow and her baby, a man they fear, and a woman they tried to break. What will people say? Let them talk, Nokai said, a rare smile touching his face. We know the truth. Good people helping each other. Nothing shameful in that. That night, while Mireya and her son slept safely in the barn, Vera and Nokai sat by the fire. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside clean and white. I have something for you, Vera said, retrieving the shirt she had made. My proposal gift. Nokai took it solemnly, studying every seam. Very fine work. The work of a woman who takes pride in what she makes, Vera said, and in who it's for. He set the shirt aside with care and brought out his own gift, the antler comb, finished now. It gleamed, carved with delicate vines and flowers. For your hair, he said softly, when we stand before the judge. Vera accepted it with trembling hands. It's beautiful. You haven't asked yet, Nokai reminded her. She set the comb down and took his hands, calloused from work, gentle in her grasp. Nokai, she said formally, will you marry me? Not for protection, not for propriety, but because you showed me that broken things can be mended, because you see me and don't turn away, because I want to face whatever comes with you beside me. Yes, he said simply, I will marry you, Vera Ashcroft, because you are strong like the mountains, because you see me, not what others name me, because winter is warmer with you here. They sat hand in hand as the fire crackled. Outside, the baby cried once, then settled, new life in the heart of winter. When? Vera asked. Soon, Nokai said, before more storms. Sylvan Grey returns next week. People will be furious, Vera said. Rhett Malvern and the others. They will, Nokai agreed, and we will face it together. You, me, Mireya, and her boy. We make our own family, our own way. Vera imagined the unlikely household they were building, outcasts all, stronger together than apart. Let them rage, she said at last. We'll be too busy living to notice. Nokai squeezed her hands. This is a good decision. No regrets? Nokai asked quietly. No regrets? Vera Ashcroft answered without hesitation. Only gratitude, for the storm that drove me to your door, for the kindness that saved my life, for the chance to build something new. The wind had died completely. leaving the world wrapped in perfect stillness. Tomorrow would bring trials, Mireya Vale's needs, the town's fury, the weight of preparing a wedding under hostile eyes. But tonight, in the warmth of the cabin, with a newborn sleeping nearby and promises already exchanged, Vera felt something she had not known in years. Peace. She was no longer running, no longer ashamed, no longer alone. She was home. And soon she would be wife to a man who valued her strength as much as her skill, who offered partnership instead of possession. The storm had passed, and what it left behind was not ruin, but transformation. A family forged by choice, strengthened by hardship, bound together against the cold. Dawn broke sharp and clear on Vera's wedding day. She stood at the window, watching the rising sun turn the snow-covered mountains to gold. In 3 short days, everything had changed. Word of the wedding had raced through Cedar Ridge, and the response had been swift. "They're coming," Nokai said quietly behind her. She saw them then, riders cutting through the morning mist. Rhett Malvern rode at the front, flanked by Reverend Corbin Vale and a knot of townsmen. "How many?" Vera asked. 12, maybe 15. Mireya stepped out from the barn, her baby bundled tight against the cold. "I should go," she said. "This is because of me, too." "No," Vera said firmly. "You stay. We face them together." Nokai checked his rifle, then deliberately set it aside. "No guns," he said. "Not today." Vera understood. Today was for union, not blood. She smoothed her dress. Not the white gown she once dreamed of, but a good wool dress Nokai had bought for her, cleaned and mended by her own careful hands. The riders stopped at the edge of the property. Malvern dismounted, his face carved with righteous fury. "Vera Ashcroft," he called, "we've come to give you one last chance to see reason." Vera stepped onto the porch. Nokai stood at her side. Mireya, trembling but upright, remained just behind them. "State your business, deputy," Vera said. "You know our business," Malvern snapped. "This abomination cannot proceed. Living in sin was bad enough. But marriage? Mixing your blood with his? Harboring the Reverend's disgraced daughter?" His voice rose. "Have you no shame?" Reverend Vale pushed forward. "Mireya, come home. Repent. Give the child to a proper family, and all may yet be forgiven." "There is nothing to forgive," Mireya said. Her voice did not shake. "I was married before God. My son was conceived in wedlock. You cast me out for your pride, not God's law." Silence fell. The Reverend's face darkened. "You dare—" "I dare speak truth," Mireya cut in. "Something you've forgotten how to do." "Enough," Malvern barked. "We didn't come to debate scripture. Vera Ashcroft, will you abandon this madness?" Vera felt Nokai's presence beside her, solid as stone, felt Mireya's courage at her back. She remembered hunger, closed doors, the sound of locks turning. And she remembered warmth, dignity, belonging. "No," she said simply. "I will not." Malvern's mouth tightened. "Then you force our hand." He gestured to his men. "We'll take you by force if we must, for your own good. Try it." The new voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Well now," Sylvan Gray said pleasantly, riding into view. He was not alone. With him came Thorne Kessler, Bennett Crow, and, unexpectedly, Lydia Rowe. Behind them rolled a wagon driven by an elderly woman Vera did not recognize. "Gentlemen," the judge said, dismounting, "I heard there might be trouble this morning. Thought I'd arrive early for the wedding." "What wedding?" Malvern snarled. "You can't mean—" "I can," Gray replied calmly. And I do. The law is clear. Any man and woman of legal age may marry, regardless of race. You may dislike it, Deputy, but your feelings do not outweigh the law. It's unnatural, someone shouted. Against God's plan. Funny, the elderly woman said, as Lydia helped her down from the wagon. Her voice was sharp and steady. I seem to recall the good book saying something about love, mercy, and minding one's own sins. The line had been drawn. I've been reading the Bible for 70 years, the elderly woman said sharply, and I don't recall God ever asking for our opinion on his plans. Vera recognized her at once. Winifred Locke, the widowed woman who lived on the outskirts of Cedar Ridge, famous for her sharp tongue and sharper mind. Mrs. Locke, Reverend Corbin Vale said carefully, surely you don't approve of this. Of what? Winifred shot back. A woman choosing marriage over starvation? A man showing Christian mercy when so-called Christians would not? She snorted. Seems to me the only unnatural thing here is how cruel people can be while hiding behind God's name. This is absurd, Rhett Malvern snapped. Thorne Kessler, Bennett Crow, you can't support this. Kessler shrugged. I came for a wedding, and to pick up my shirts. Business is business. And I brought fabric, Crow added. Figured Miss Vera, soon to be Mrs. Nokai, might want to expand her sewing work. Vera felt tears sting her eyes. Not everyone had come to condemn. Some had come to support, or at least to trade. It was more than she had ever dared hope. You'll regret this, Malvern warned. When half-breed children run wild and moral rot spreads through this town. The only rot I see, Sylvan Gray said calmly, is in hearts that choose hatred over humanity. Now, unless you have lawful grounds to stop this marriage, I suggest you leave. The ceremony will proceed at noon. For a breathless moment, violence hovered like smoke. Malvern's hand twitched toward his gun, and Vera felt Nokai tense beside her. Then Winifred spoke again. Seems to me, Deputy, you're outnumbered. Not in guns, perhaps, but in conscience. Do you really want to be remembered as the man who spilled blood over a wedding? Slowly, grudgingly, Malvern backed away. This isn't over, he muttered, the threat sounding hollow now. We'll be watching. You'll do nothing, Judge Gray said coldly, unless you want charges for harassment and intimidation of a territorial judge. My patience has limits. The riders shifted, uncertain, then began to disperse. Reverend Vale paused, staring at Mireya Vale, who stood in the barn doorway, holding her baby. You are dead to me, he said flatly. I've been dead to you since you chose pride over love, Mireya replied. But I'm alive here, Father. More alive than I ever was under your roof. He turned and rode away, without another word. When the dust settled, Vera found herself surrounded by the most unlikely wedding party imaginable. Winifred Locke immediately took charge, directing Lydia Rowe to help prepare a simple wedding breakfast. Kessler and Crow spoke with Nokai about business, treating him as they would any supplier. Judge Gray smiled faintly. Shall we proceed? I believe there are vows to exchange. The ceremony was simple, held in the main room of the cabin. Vera wore Nokai's gift, the carved antler comb, in her hair. Nokai wore the shirt she had sewn for him. Mireya stood as witness, her baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. Lydia remained, despite the risk, to her position. Winifred sat in the best chair, nodding in approval. Do you, Vera Ashcroft, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Judge Gray asked. I do, Vera said, her voice steady and clear. Do you, Nokai, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do, Nokai answered, his deep voice filling the room. Then by the authority vested in me by the territory of Colorado, I pronounce you husband and wife. Nokai kissed her gently, not with heat, but with promise. And Vera felt something settle deep inside her. Not merely safety or shelter, but belonging. The wedding meal was simple, yet full of warmth. Winifred entertained them with stories of the town's earliest days, when survival mattered more than skin. Kessler and Crow placed more orders, shirts, and even leatherwork from Nokai. Lydia held Mireya's baby while Mireya ate the first full meal she'd had in days. As the sun climbed high, the guests prepared to leave. There will be talk, Lydia warned softly. Consequences. There always are, Vera said. We'll manage. Winifred pressed a small purse into Vera's hands. Wedding gift, and orders for 2 winter dresses. My hands aren't what they used to be. Thank you, Vera whispered. Don't thank me, Winifred said. Just live well. That's the best revenge against small minds. When the others departed, Vera and Nokai stood together in the doorway, watching the mountains glow again, this time in rose and gold. No regrets? Nokai asked quietly. None, Vera Ashcroft assured him. None? Nokai asked, lifting a brow. None, she repeated. And when he looked suddenly concerned, she laughed and leaned into his solid warmth. I should have married you sooner. Nokai smiled, rare and unguarded. Mireya Vale stepped out from the barn with her baby, joining them in the doorway. What do we do now? She asked quietly. Now we work, Vera said. We build. We prove them wrong, not with arguments, but with lives well lived. And the house? Nokai added. Vera turned to him in surprise. What house? He pointed toward a flat stretch of ground near the cabin. When spring comes, we build. Bigger house, room for family. His eyes flicked to Mireya and the child in her arms. All family. Tears slid down Vera's cheeks. From begging for a place to sleep to planning a real home. From being cast out and shamed to being married and, at least by some, respected. From alone to surrounded by people she had chosen and who had chosen her. Yes, she said softly, we build. As darkness settled on her wedding day, Vera Crow Feather, for that was her name now, claimed without apology, sat by the fire with her husband, their unlikely family close at hand. Outside, the world might still rage against their choices. Inside, there was warmth, purpose, and hope. She had asked only for work and shelter, nothing more. She had been given those, and so much else. Dignity, love, a future. The barn she once begged to sleep in now sheltered Mireya and her child. The cabin that had saved her life would soon grow into a true home. Mercy is not sin, Vera murmured, remembering the words that had once steadied her when all else failed. And fire is not shame, Nokai replied, understanding. They are beginnings, he said, real life. And so they were. At the margins of society, in quiet defiance of prejudice and judgment, a family took root, not bound by blood, but by choice. A place where the cast out were welcomed, where strength was measured in kindness, not conformity, where love crossed the lines others had drawn. The fire crackled, the baby cooed softly, and Vera Crow Feather smiled. She was home. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blaze the trail. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you. Aviso Legal/Disclaimer. These stories are crafted purely for entertainment and may contain imaginative additions or dramatic interpretations inspired by old frontier eras. We use AI-based resources, voice, imagery, and drafting, as part of our creative process. But every final detail is carefully reviewed and shaped by human effort to preserve emotional depth and authenticity. We strictly follow YouTube's rules regarding AI-generated content and refrain from deepfakes, altered identities, or misleading representations. All images, sounds, and related materials are lawfully obtained. Please do not reuse, modify, or distribute any portion of this content without written permission. Thank you for valuing creativity, respect, and original work.